Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. A Professor Sunreis Productions! Hello class, Professor Sunreis here. In today's class we're taking a look at why I am not playing Rockets. So we will be going over all of the pros and the cons of the Rockets, especially in the current meta, because I feel like in the current meta a lot of things have changed which are not really speaking for the Rockets, but of course they're still a strong engine and they do have the merits to play them. So in this video we'll be going over all of these things, but before we get into the actual video, a quick shout out to me, I guess. On this Sunday at around 11 to 12 p.m. European time, I will be streaming a regional here in Rheine in Germany of the drachenheld.de store. So it will be all in German, but if you're interested in checking it out, I will be leaving the link in the description down below. And without further ado, don't forget to seal pass and the subscribe button, leave some feedback down below, and let's get right into the video. So how good are the Rockets actually? Let's talk a lot about it. What's good, what's bad, are they still worth playing? This is gonna be the toughest part, of course. So first of all, why we should be playing Rockets. Quick launch is a very good extender. It being one of the few ways to push through a normal summon being removed and still get a Bestial into the board via being a dragon into the graveyard. More complicated than it had to be, I feel like, is very important. It also not being only that, but also being like a way to get into tuner access really helps of making it not only a card which unbricks you, but also a card which can let you extend and get you more ceiling off. It also offers a lot of bodies going second. Boot Sector is an insane card going second, being able to normal summon any rocket, go into Striker Dragon, and then use the Boot Sector to 99% of the time be able to summon out another body if the opponent doesn't disrupt it, of course, is very valuable. Especially if you have more rockets in the graveyard, a later Boot Sector push can open up lots of plays, so that is a very good. Going first, it's not as crazy, but going second, these feel very good if you don't draw the Boot Sector, of course. And the Synchro Access, of course, having Omni Negates in the form of Savage, in the form of Baron is really helpful. Dissipator is an insane card, and having access to that is, it's very good. Borderland, also one hell of a card, it being a tower monster, which in the past a lot of decks had really hard struggle. Lots of decks were on books and just targeting monster negates effects, and none of them could really touch Borderland. So Borderland, if it's a good card in the meta, it is one hell of a card, and definitely, probably in my opinion, the strongest reason to play the Rockets, because yeah, the Synchro Access is nice, having the extra consistency with quick launch, blah, but Borderland is really strong and gives us a secondary win condition next to like the Seal, Masquerena, resource loop control, whatever. And then lastly, also very important in my opinion, dodge targeting effect. In the German Nats I was super heavy on the Rockets. I mean, it was also with 3 Chaos Base, so the deck did work a little bit differently when I was playing 3 Tracer, just because 99% of the decks were on 3 books in the main deck, Book of Moon. So if you normal summon a Tracer, you could always just dodge that, so they couldn't also just book your normal summon, because at least then, yeah, you could Darklock yourself and use the Tracer effect, and then at least be able to play, giving you another tune on the board in the form of Caliber, and then setting up the graveyard. So if there are lots of targeting negates, especially books which really hurt the deck going first, having access into the Rocket package is really helpful in my opinion. So why shouldn't we play the Rockets? Of course, no spoiler alert, or I guess spoiler alert, I'm not playing Rockets right now, and of course there have to be good reasons, right? I think the most important reason for me is the awful ratios. It's basically 3 bricks. If you take a look at a basic Rocket package, it's 3 quick launch, 2 Tracer, 1 Recharger, 1 Router, and then 1 Boot Sector. And all of Recharger, Boot Sector, and Router absolutely atrocious to draw going second. Yes, sometimes you can make the Router work, but that's only with basically Chaos Base, which is at 1 right now, so that got even brickier. And then even Tracer going second is not that great. Going first, yeah, that can be fine. Normal summon a Tracer can be a way of playing, and then you can later on get it in, like you can banish it off the Bestial, and then you can later summon it off PC, get back your Synchro Access. Yes, those things are great going first, but going second, which is where I had the most struggle with my Dragon Link decks, or like with Dragons in general, I feel like they were just too much. They were too much of a commitment. They were too big of a package with too few good cards and too many bricky cards, especially hard bricks in the form of Boot Sector. It just didn't feel good anymore. And then Typhoon hard counters Borderland. I don't know if you have read Typhoon, but the opponent can just completely ignore the Borderland. Yeah, it's an Imperm, who cares? It's not really that great of a disruption. And then they can break your complete board, and then as the last option, or like last thing, overlay any random body for a Typhoon, bounce the Borderland. It's not even the graveyard, so that you can revive it off a Recharger, and you will never be able to get to that Borderland again. And shit just sucks. So the secondary win condition a lot of times was if you get hand trapped to death, you could still just make a Borderland. This doesn't even do anything anymore because every deck can have an easy out for the Borderland. So in my opinion, the Borderland just doesn't make sense to do at all anymore. It's super easy to remove. It doesn't really enable OTKs unless there's everything in attack. But then probably access code is also an OTK. So I think Borderland just completely lost its niche in the meta just because of Typhoon being a card. And while not every deck is on Typhoon right now, there are way too many in my opinion for it to be like a very solid win condition. So I'd rather not use my resources to go into this card at all anyways, right? If that makes sense. The Omnis take a lot of resources. So yeah, having access to Omnis is great, but in the current format, Omnis first of all, aren't even that important. And second of all, they take so many resources. Going for Ravine, Send, Ab, Search, Tracer, then activate the Boot Sector, going through both of your field spells, and then popping the field spell as well with the Tracer feels awful just for one negate, especially if that trades with like any random talents or like it doesn't feel great. Having access to Baron is nice, usually takes a lot of the head advantage anyways, probably not as many of the field spells, but probably then more like the random leftover Bestials which you had, which is definitely way better, especially in a matchup where Bestials aren't really that great. You basically traded like a non-engine slot for that, which feels way better, leaving us with more follow-up. But overall, the Omnis take lots of resources for it to be like, oh yeah, but you get easy Omni access, yeah, but you have to work a lot for it. And again, the bricks. If you've played Dragon Link for a long time, you know all of the random one-offs which are really annoying. Yeah, you can sometimes make them work. Boot Sector being able to be drawn, especially in the draw format, can actually be like a very good extender. If you have like a normal summon Boot Sector, a Lubellian, and a Rocket, you can go for the Lubellian, or you could draw, luckily we can still use the normal summon and the Boot Sector to get out the Tracer, and then you do some things, you know it, you name it. But other than that, the bricks are like, in my opinion, are at a critical mass in Dragon Link where it was just way too much. And I just can't do it anymore. And if there is a viable option to go to, and in my opinion there is, you definitely should take it. So, are they still worth playing? Well, with a decent amount of shifters in the form of random decks, but mostly Fluanderees and what's it called, Exorcisters, I guess, and sometimes in side decks of like weird decks. I think Vanadium can side it, and theoretically Unchained can also side it, I believe. With a decent amount of shifters in there, Quick Launch is a good card because it at least lets you do something under shifter. But in my opinion, these plays always felt way too bad to be like anything meaningful, and it was mostly having these plays plus a good amount of non-engine, which you could then survive a turn and then kill in the next turn or just play in the next turn. So I think this is not even that great of a point, but I just wanted to make it. Quick Launch is one of the few cards which works under shifter, and having Quick Launch plus one Bestial is really good under shifter. There are very few targeting effects. Non-engine, basically none. It's all really hand traps, which our Rockets are fine into. They don't excel into it, but they don't get hard countered by non-engine. But there are very few targeting effects. A few are in the Rescue Ace matchup, which is where I'm missing them the most. Being able to trade with basically both of the traps feels really good. But then again, they can also just use the book, and then you use a Tracer to chain, and then you still have a body. But in the end, they are really good in the Rescue Ace matchup. I gotta give them that. But other than that, they're not really that crazy. They are decent against Unchained, but we don't need them against Unchained. And then against all of the hardcore combo decks, they don't give us anything. So in my opinion, there are too few targeting effects to make this worth it. Lots of Typhoons, like I said, Typhoon hard counters Barrowlands, and at least what I've been seeing, a lot of Rescue Ace lists have Typhoon. Probably being the most represented deck in the format gives it that edge. Then also Unchained lists can, in my opinion, fit a Typhoon if they really wanted to, and they probably should. The card is fucking insane. So with decent amount of Typhoons, Borderland just doesn't cut it anymore, and then I just don't see a reason to play it. The best endboard is actually CRP, in my opinion, ever since SP Little Light came out. We don't need to commit a lot. We can just go seal IP, place your best around Nibiru, and gives us the most resources available to us, especially because we always have to go for Regain Summon and Magnamut. It just gives us the best of both worlds in the form of disruption and follow-up and safety while comboing. And in that endboard, we don't need a Borderland, and we don't need an Omni Negate to protect that, because we are completely immune to any books which could be being played. The only thing which we can be hit by is a talent, but then again, a lot of times people go into battle phase and force out our stuff, so we can remove the first body in the battle phase, or we can make them commit 2 bodies, and then we can use like a Jerusalem IP combo or whatever, getting rid of 2 bodies before the talent is alive, which is of course way better than getting rid of 1 body and making the talents alive. And most importantly, like I said, we do have to have a good alternative to the Rockets, and in my opinion, the Horus give that, being able to have an insane amount of new play starters in the form of 3 Seti, and then having very decent extenders in the form, or like play enablers in the form of 1 or 2 King Sarcophagus is really, really helpful. Similar to like just normal summoning a Recharger, having a King Sarcophagus and then dumping like any of the random Bestials you have can be very, very helpful. Of course, it's not insane. King Sarcophagus is not the greatest card, but it's, in my opinion, good enough to play at 1 or at 2, I should say, to give us more starters than the deck has ever had, and it just really, really helps to get like to this critical mass of starters to be at a consistent level to be able to play. So overall, I would say they are not worth it right now. What would need to happen for them to be worth it again? In my opinion, it's just more targeting negates or effects. So if Rescue Ace becomes even more popular, it could be something to be taken into consideration. Yeah, the Borrow Land thing is annoying, and Typhoon just hard counters it, but because Seal IP is just so strong, we will probably never go into a Borrow Land in the first place, and it will just be to eat up board states, or it will be to have a floodgate against decks which cannot out it. For example, like against an Exorcist or something, they probably won't be playing Typhoon because they cannot make it regularly enough. So against like decks like that, it's very, very important. But in my opinion, what needs to happen is lots of books in the format again, where you can then just play a 3 quick launch and like a very small rocket engine, probably next to the Horus engine, just to get the maximum amount of non-engine out, starters out, and a format which doesn't require lots of non-engine. Because a deck like that, I did test it a lot and it did feel good, but the problem was the lack of non-engine. Because I was at like 45 cards with like 9 non-engine slots, and in the current format, you just cannot do this. You need more non-engine to be able to counter all of the combo deck / Rescue Ace. In my opinion, if the format becomes more focused on targeting disruption in the form of books, or like in-engine targeting disruption, which there is already a fair amount, but I think not enough, and the format doesn't require lots of hand traps to be played, plus a format where Typhoon, which is of course the extra like the sprinkle on top, isn't all too crazy represented, I think then it's time to pick out the Rockets again. But for now, I think just playing good old Horus Bestial is the way to go. And without further ado, guys, thank you guys for watching. Class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave. Professor Sunreis out. Peace.